So today I want to talk about performance anxiety, performance preparation, and mindfulness tactics to kind of deal with some of the harder parts of that. Um, I know that performances can be one of the harder parts of what we do. And somebody said something recently to me about how, it felt weird to them to know a professional musician that got performance anxiety. And that seemed like such an odd comment to me, that it actually inspired me to start this whole class because, you know, being a professional, being a performer does not mean that you don't struggle with anxiety, does not make performing any easier. As a matter of fact, we tend to make it even harder on ourselves. I look at some of my younger students who have never had problems with confidence, who have never had bad experiences performing, and they get right up on stage and they're just like, yeah, I'm doing the thing, right? Whereas we musicians who have, as resilient as musicians can be, we have gone through hardship. All of us have dealt with hard things, and all of us are super critical of our playing. Therefore, a lot of times performance can be just that much harder. So, when I think of dealing with performance anxiety, I like to look back at these younger students that do it so well. These younger students that get up on stage, they've never had a bad experience in their life, and they're getting up in front of their mom and their dad and their peers, and they're just like, yes, we're doing the thing. I like to look at that as the example. And we do kind of the same thing in Alexander technique. We talk about how a baby is kind of the goal, the way that they just sit up so naturally and perfectly. They don't have all of these bad habits built into their psyche, built into their bodies. They just do the thing. So that's what I like to look at as the example. Um, and I just like to think about, the way that that happens, right? How we can get back to being that young child or being that, young musician that doesn't have a care in the world, doesn't have the anxiety, isn't self-critical. And if they are, they're, realistic, right? And are confident in their skills and confident in their performance abilities. So that's kind of what I want us to center this around, getting back to that childlike ability to just do it. And of course, we're going to talk about mindfulness techniques and tactics, and of course, preparation and managing that performance anxiety in the process. So before we dive into that, I'm Cassie, aka the tattooed flute teacher. I know that you follow me on Instagram, but I have suffered from performance anxiety and generalized anxiety for my whole life. In the beginning, when I was younger, I did have that moment of, I did not mind getting up on stage and singing and dancing and, being lead in plays and over time, I became a very anxious human who I think 2 years ago, maybe not 2 years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't have like there was no level of bullying me that would have got me up on a stage because I was just so terrified of failing. And so with that, I've done a lot of groundwork over the last 5 years, and have worked really hard to get past that. And I want to share a lot of the techniques that I have used to get past that, to deal with that and get to where I am today, where, getting up on stage or performing in front of somebody is not the end of the world. I'm not going to have a heart attack. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be just fine. So with that, again, we're going to talk about how to manage performance anxiety effectively using mindfulness techniques. We're going to learn a lot about mindfulness and its benefits. We're going to learn how to set intention. We're going to learn how to feel that in our bodies. And I know that sounds like a lot to do in an hour, but I'm going to do my best. And again, if you have questions, feel free to jump in. I'll try to leave spaces open in this for you to ask questions, but feel free to cut me off and jump in and say, hey, I didn't understand that. So mindfulness in general, I really like to incorporate mindfulness into my studio as a whole because we talk a lot about mindfulness. Well, many teachers talk a lot about mindfulness in music education as a whole. Mindfulness, a lot of the functionality in music is being present in the moment and being aware, right? So we have this tendency to move fast, to be working towards our goals, to be in the future or even in the past, looking at things that we did beforehand and not really being in this moment. And I talk a lot about mindfulness in practice, like in the practice room. And I've done a couple of seminars on that as well. However, this is particularly important in this performance space, being in the present moment. So being in the present moment can help encourage focus, calmness, and reduce our anxiety. And we'll talk about how here in just a minute. But right this second, I would love for you to take a second and set an intention, set a personal intention for this class. This could be learning to calm those nerves, improving focus, maybe just learning a little bit about mindfulness in general. Whatever makes sense for you, I want you to set that personal intention. And if you feel comfortable, jump into the chat and share what that intention is. I'll tell you what mine is here in just a second. So my intention for this class is to teach you how to be a more present human, more mindful human, and how that can benefit performance. So again, yours will obviously look different than mine, but setting an intention at the very beginning, we can look back on that intention and see if you got what you need and ask questions surrounding that intention. So what is performance anxiety? Obviously, if you're here, you probably know exactly what performance anxiety is and what it does to you. However, what I find performance anxiety to be is an internal dialogue, hypotheticals, obviously physical symptoms such as sweating, heart rate, breathing, our hyperventilation, things like that, as well as clouded judgment. Performance anxiety can cause us to act in ways that we wouldn't normally act. It can cause us to be irritable. It can cause us to panic. It can cause us to be, fearful or, just fearful, angry, all that stuff. Performance anxiety can manifest in a lot of ways. And I think that we forget that sometimes. Sometimes we think of performance anxiety as just like the kid sitting off stage with the paper bag, breathing into it and panicking. That's not always what it is. Performance anxiety can show up as irritability, anger, nitpickiness. I've seen students and fellow performers that have, acted unkindly to the people that were helping them set up a performance or been nitpicky about the post-performance refreshments, or there was a typo in the program and they lost their minds over it. So performance anxiety is not just the panic, right? It can manifest itself in a lot of ways, and anger and irritability being one of them. So if you've ever experienced that, this is going to be another great way for us to get past that. But understand that anxiety and feeling nervous is normal and shared by a lot of performers and professionals. So this is not an abnormal way to feel. Even that anger and irritability and, nitpickiness, or that anxiety, fear, the breathing into a paper bag, the internal dialogue, the hypotheticals, creating hypotheticals, that is all a normal thing. And don't let anybody tell you that it's not. Adults, particularly, we all have this tendency to believe that the world is ending when we are feeling anxious. And a lot of us do feel anxious. Now, there's a lot of people, such as myself, who suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, which is a heightened level of anxiety. Now, that said, if that's something that you feel like you're going through, by all means, speak with a doctor about it there, because doesn't have to be that way, right? That said, feeling anxious about a performance, feeling anxious about a masterclass, even feeling anxious about a lesson is totally 100% normal, and you are not alone. So mindfulness can transform your anxiety from a hindrance into a tool by realizing the difference between hypothetical situations and reality. So a lot of times our anxiety will lie to us. It will tell us things that are not true. It will make up scenarios in our brain that just are at best not likely, Anxiety will create hypotheticals in our brain, such as, I'm going to get booed off stage, or I am going to walk off stage and nobody's going to clap for me, or I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose this job because I played so badly. Any number of things, right, can cause, well, any number of things that your brain, which has infinite ability to make things up, it's going to potentially do. So part of mindfulness is learning how to distinguish these hypotheticals from reality. So being in this present moment and going, really, what is the likelihood that I'm going to get booed off stage? When was the last time that happened to anyone, right? When was the last time somebody performed something and didn't get any applause? Or better yet, I worked really hard to perform this. The likelihood of me losing this job as a result of a bad performance, of one bad performance, even if it is bad, which is not likely because I worked so hard, how likely is it that I'm going to actually lose this gig or lose this job as a result? So again, transforming those hypotheticals to reality, okay? And realizing what the difference is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. So before we go on, we're going to talk about some breathing techniques first. Do you have any questions or specific things that you want to touch on before we move forward into the actual demonstration and, activities portion?
I'm all set on my end.
Cool. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about some breathing techniques, breathing activities, Lordy, for calm and focus. I want to talk first about breath awareness. So obviously, you're a bassoonist, am I right?
Yes.
Yes. So you understand breathing at its core, right? So you have a very good grasp of breathing. And I'm sure you have a very good grasp of conscious breathing. However, what we don't talk about is how a lot of the breathing techniques and exercises that we do as wind instrumentalists can help with this level of this performance anxiety and play right into mindfulness. These breathing techniques that we use and these breathing exercises that we use, which we'll get into in a second, are good for lowering blood pressure, easing the sympathetic nervous system, bringing us back to reality over the hypotheticals, right? Bringing us back into the present moment and going, okay, I'm here, I'm human, I am real, this is real, right? So focusing in on the breath. So what I would like to do is a box breathing technique. And basically, and I'm sure you've done something similar over the years, but we're going to do it less for expanding our breathing, expanding our lung capacity, and control, and more for the cognitive benefits. Okay, more for the mindfulness benefits. So we're going to just pay attention to where the breath is going in the body, right? Following it all the way down into our low lungs, holding, and then following it back out, right? So with this box breathing technique, we're going to go low and slow. We're going to breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4. All right. So again, you're a wind instrumentalist. This should not be difficult, but we're shifting the focus away from, I want to expand my lung capacity, and to the, I want to calm. I want to bring myself into the moment. So we're going to go ahead and start. Ready? Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. And again, we're working to follow the breath, pay attention to the breath, and feel what's happening in our bodies while we are using the breath. So again, instead of using this as a phrasing or, just a general like wind instrument progress exercise, we're using it as I'm just listening to the breath, listening to my body. So another good one would be the 4-7-8 technique. It's very, very similar to box breathing. Essentially, we're breathing in for 4, holding for 7, exhaling for 8. And that's another great one to, again, just bring yourself into this present moment. So we're going to do the 4-7-8 technique just a couple of times here, just to give it a try. So we're going to let all the air out of our lungs before we begin. Breathe normally for just a second. Pay attention to where the breath is going. Breathe out and inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Nice job. So if you don't mind, what came up there? What did you feel happening in your body and in your mind, if anything?
It was just like a focused sense of relaxation. Like nothing specific, but just being in the moment, being present.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly what we want, right? We want just to be able to hone in on that breath so that we know it's kind of like the joke of the like pinch me, right? We're feeling something in our body so that we know that we're here. We're right here. We're not thinking about this future us. We're not thinking about this past us. We're thinking about just being right here in the moment. So beautiful. I love that. Um, I highly encourage practicing these breathing techniques during, at the beginning of your practice sessions, and doing what we did kind of at the beginning of this class where we talked about setting an intention. So you can do these breathing techniques to bring you into the present, set your intention, and then practice. Or breathing techniques, set your intention, and then walk out on stage. So this is a beautiful way to bring yourself into the moment, get your mind ready to be completely present and completely in the moment with your instrument, because you are a whole person. You play a whole instrument, right? You are not this fragmented future and past, right? You are a whole person in this moment, right? And that's what we tend to step away from that when we get super anxious about performing, right? Again, we step into this, what's going to happen in the future, or what happened in the past, right? How did I feel in the past? Or, did I have a bad performance in the past? Did I have a bad practice session a week ago? What could possibly happen in the future? So we fragment ourselves, right? We step one foot into the future and one foot into the past, and then we're not here in this moment, in this very real setting, right? So again, we're just trying to bring ourselves into this presence, and being very realistic about the fact that I've prepared for this, right? I'm prepared, I'm ready, I feel good, I feel present. I am a whole human in this present moment playing a whole instrument. I am not a hypothetical future me. I am not a past me. I am me right now. And that's what we try to do with those breathing exercises, just being able to feel the sensation of the breath and bring ourselves into the present moment. Now, of course, we also have body awareness, which is a huge part of this, right? So, what, if you don't mind, what do you find happens to you when you are feeling particularly anxious about a performance? Not necessarily in your mind, but in your body. Do you know what happens?
I always mess up my breathing. None of my breathing goes correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And a lot of that has to do with tension, right? So physical tension arises from anxiety and it impacts our performance, right? So the shoulders and the neck affect the entire body. So if you're tight here, which is where we get tight 100% of the time, this is the first place, right? What happens when we get angry or upset or nervous? Our shoulders go up to the ears, I love this story that was told to me by one of my former teachers, and she said, I believe it came out of the Body Keeps Score. If you've never read this book, or I have read the book, but I don't remember if it was in the Body Keeps Score or another one. But there is this story of a child playing with blocks, and unfortunately, trigger warning, there is some abuse factor in this story. Um, there's a story of a child playing with their blocks, right? Or Legos or whatever, and they're just sitting on the floor. They're not expecting anything to happen. They're completely relaxed. Um, Parent, sibling, whoever comes up and just whacks them on the back of the head. Okay. What's the first thing that happens to that child? What's the first thing that their body tries to do to protect them? Their shoulders come up, right? Because their body is trying to protect them from that impact, right? First thing that happens to every single one of us when our body goes into fight or flight, right? It's our shoulders tighten and go up to protect our neck, right? So every time that child goes to play with their blocks after that, their first response is to shoulders up, protect the neck, right? So with that, every single experience that we have had as musicians follows us, right? And again, this is kind of stepping back into that idea of we are not our past selves, but we are present, right? So, but when we go into this anxious moment because of our past experiences, right? The first thing that happens is our shoulders tense. Our shoulders go up, our neck tenses, and as a result, we restrict all of that breathing, right? We restrict all of that air, and then we're not able to make it as easily through phrases, right? So I know that I do the same thing where I may have marked phrases and I've practiced them and practiced them and practiced them. But the minute that I get on stage, my shoulders and neck tense up, my throat tenses up, I restrict my breathing, and I'm not making it through those places, right? So then I have to find weird places to breathe, which completely throws me off the whole rest of the time. So taking a second, and this could be on stage, off stage, because we all know it is okay to make your audience wait in a solo performance. Just to be clear, it is 1000% okay to stand on stage and do your thing for a second, center, and then play when you're ready. One of the things that I like to do is a body scan. So I will, either standing just off stage or even quickly on stage, close my eyes. I will go through each part, right? So top of the head, temples, eyes, nose, sinuses, ears, jaw. I know you hear this one, jaw, neck, throat, shoulders, shoulder blades, chest, upper back, lower back, belly button, hips, thighs, knees, calves, feet, arches, toes. So going through each part of that as you're breathing and actively looking for tension, not judging it, not labeling it as bad, right? Because it just is what it is. It's our body trying to protect us, right? So we don't label it as bad, but we just go, hey, I got this, right? Okay, I feel tension in my throat. Hey, I got this. Let it go, right? Feel tension in my shoulders. I got this. I'm fine. Let it go. So again, we don't want to label it as bad when we are doing a body scan. We don't want to label this tension as bad, right? Because that makes your body go even more into, oh, I got to fix it, right? Our bodies love us so much. They try so hard that they they try so hard to help us, but sometimes they do things that aren't helping, right? Our brain tells our body that we're in trouble, and our body goes, let me fix it, and then our shoulders come up to our ears, right? Or our neck tenses up, right? Because again, it's trying to protect us, it's trying to help us. So we kind of have to tell it like, hey, I got this. It's fine. I've got this. So is that making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to do just a quick body scan exercise here, where again, remember the shoulders and the neck affect the entire body. If we're tight in the shoulders and neck, our whole body is not going to move correctly, right? Because we've got nerves that run all the way to our fingers that are going to tighten, contract, that are going to send messages to tighten and contract, right? As soon as our shoulders go up. So we're going to actually really, really hone in on the shoulders, neck, jaw, all of this area. And again, this is particularly because we're we're wind people. So, but this also goes for every other type of instrumentalist. This goes particularly for vocalists, wind instruments, but also, strings, percussion, all that good stuff. So we're going to hone in on this neck, shoulder, throat, jaw connection. But we are going to go through a quick body scan that's going to go through everything. Okay. So I'm going to have you close your eyes. And just like we did before, we're going to just hone in on the breathing for a second. Breathe naturally. Pay attention to where it's going in the body. If it's going to your low lungs, if it's going into your chest. We're not labeling, we're just observing. Now we're going to draw our awareness up to the top of our head. Just like to imagine a string attached to the top of my head, almost like I'm a marionette doll. Just a string pulling me up very naturally, right? We're not holding ourselves, right? But we're just allowing this string to draw us upward. Now we're going to slowly move our attention to the temples, the eyebrows, the eyes. If you find tension there, breathe in and just try to let it go. Try to relax. We're going to move down to the nose, the sinuses, the cheeks, and the ears. Sometimes it helps to swallow if you feel a lot of tension going on here. And we're going to head down to the jaw. The jaw, the lips, the teeth. Okay. Really, really hone in on this. Let your jaw just kind of hang naturally, not holding it, right? Now let's add in the neck and the throat. Remembering that string coming up and just holding this up, right? Letting our head float on top of the neck instead of holding it, right? We have this tendency to want to hold our head on top. We'll need to hold the head. Just let it float. Open your throat as though you're getting ready to sing. I like to use more like you, to open the throat here. The back of the neck. Now the shoulders. Let your shoulder blades just kind of slide down your back or glide. Now we're going to take into our awareness our upper arms. And those just relax. Our elbows, forearms. This one's a doozy, the wrists. And you can let your hands either hang by your side or just sit in your lap, whatever feels good. But take a second to let go of the tension in the wrists. Now I want you to imagine each finger separately. I'm not going to walk you through them, but I want you to imagine each finger and the bones right? That run through these carpals and metacarpals here, right? Each bone that runs down and connects into your wrist. And I want you to imagine those bones just kind of letting go. Same with your fingers on each side. So we can, if you're unclear on how to do that, you can flex out this way, make a fist. We're feeling how that tension feels in an exaggerated way. And then let it go, right? Let it go limp, let it go completely relaxed. Sometimes we need to do that with a body scan in general, is actually flexing or tensing those muscles and then letting them go. That is okay too, because sometimes we're not sure how it's supposed to feel or how it actually feels when we do have tension, right? We sometimes I have a tendency as a private lesson teacher to look at my students and say, oh, I see tension going on in your wrists, right? But they might not necessarily know what that means, right? I can say, yeah, I see tension in your wrists, and they're going, okay, you know. So we learn how to flex the wrists, right? We know how that feels, and then we let it go. Lightly to neutral, right? So we're gonna now start to add in our rib cage, our upper back, and just letting our head float on top of our neck. This is very important to keep checking in with your head and the floating, right? We don't want to not holding it. We're letting it float. Our lower ribs, our belly button, our hips, our glutes. This is another big one that causes tension across the body. I know that sounds silly, but we hold right there, right? We think that we need our glutes and our hips to hold us up. We don't. We don't. Thighs can tense and let it go. Kneecaps, same thing. Tense, let it go. Calves. Then our feet. I want to first bring your attention to the arch. So again, you can tense the arch, right, by flexing your foot, pointing your toes, and let it go. And then the toes, each one, picturing those tarsal bones that go all the way through your foot, picturing those and just reminding them to calm down, right? And then I want you to hold your whole feet, both your feet, into awareness. Just relax, relax. So again, we're not looking to judge. We're not looking to be ungrateful for what our body is trying to do. We're really just looking to explain to it and to let it know that we got this. You know, our brain has got this. Just to relax and let me do the work, right? Let me take over. So that's what we're trying to do. Again, being completely present and being completely aware of what's going on in our bodies is the big important part of this, right? That's why we go through every part, just to see what's going on. And again, not judging, we're not labeling it as good or bad, right? We're not scolding ourselves. We're just going, I got this. I got this. So again, we can incorporate this body awareness into daily routines, warm-ups, practices, all of the, I mean, I like to do a body scan when I wake up because sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, my whole body is just like, ugh, it's like, you're not gonna feel good today. Let me help you, you know? So sometimes I like to do a body scan just in the morning, just to take stock of what's going on, just to take stock of what's happening, right? But this is a great pre-practice warm up. You can add this into your warm up. This is a great pre-performance, way to just check in and say, hey, I got this. We're fine. We're right here. We're not this fragmented human that is in the future and in the past. We are a whole human who plays a whole instrument in a whole space in this whole moment right now. Finally, I want to talk about a couple of techniques to manage our thoughts and emotions, because obviously this is a big part of it, right? If you've ever had the racing thoughts, the doom and gloom, I am that person 1000%. So I can 100% speak from the heart on this one. Using mindfulness and being in the present moment allows us to observe rather than react, right? So it allows us to bring a thought. When a thought comes into our head, it allows us to go, okay, is that a hypothetical or is that reality? Right? Is that something that I'm making up? Is that a lie or is that the reality of this situation? So understanding being right here, right now, in the moment, and being able to differentiate those things. So again, hypothetical, right? People are gonna boo me off stage. I'm gonna mess up. I'm not gonna play a single right note. I'm gonna mess up my breathing, right? Those are all hypotheticals. That's all in the future. Those are all things that your brain is making up, right? Those aren't based in reality, right? Whereas in the present moment, I can rethink and go, okay, the reality is that I've worked really hard, right? I have spent X amount of hours in the practice room. I have prepped for this. I am, getting ready to, show these people what I have worked so hard for. Hypothetical. They're just waiting for me to fail. They're just waiting to hear me play a wrong note. That's not real, right? Who goes to a concert? Who goes to anyone's performance waiting for somebody to play incorrectly? Nobody. And if they do, they're irrelevant, right? So the good musicians, right? The good humans are not doing it. The reality is that the people who are here to see you play are excited to see you play. They're excited for you to show them what you've been working on, right? So instead, we're reframing that thought from hypothetical to reality, and we're saying, okay, I know that my mom, my dad, my grandma, my cousins, my whoever, my professor, my colleagues, or even something like if you're playing a wedding, the bride and groom, they're not waiting for me to make a mistake, right? They're not sitting here going, ugh, just I'm waiting, right? You didn't get hired because they want you to make a mistake and fall on your face, right? That we're not we always tend to picture like the big like hook where they pull somebody off stage. Nobody is waiting to do that. Okay. So reframing those thoughts, right? I'm going to fall on my face. They're waiting for me to make a mistake. Everybody's going to know if I'm going to make a mistake. These are all hypotheticals, right? So when those thoughts come into your brain, you label them and you say, okay, that's a hypothetical, right? That is my brain, once again, trying to protect me from a hypothetical situation that has not happened and is not going to happen, right? The reality in this moment, the truth of this moment is that I've worked very hard to be here. I have, you know, I have people in the crowd that love me and want to hear and are excited to hear what I have worked so hard for. I have put in years and years of work on my instrument. All of those things are the reality. And also, I like to throw in, if I make a mistake, nobody is going to jump on stage and punch me in the face. I know that one sounds really stupid, but that is also a reality that I like to remind myself of. Nobody is going to punch me in the face if I make a mistake, right? So what's the real danger here? If I do make a mistake, what's the real danger? The real danger is that I make a mistake and I move on. So, and I know a lot of this is just reminding you of the obvious, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves, and I have to remind my students, and I have to remind lots of people of the obvious because our brains like to make things up. So we're reframing our thoughts, right? We are noting whether or not that thought or feeling is hypothetical or reality, right? And we're also having compassion for ourselves, right? We're also giving ourselves some grace. We are, understanding that if you're already stressed out and somebody comes up and starts yelling at you that you're a failure, you're just going to get it, it's just going to spiral, right? So if you take a second and go, that's not helpful. That this hypothetical is not helpful, right? What would you say to a friend that was about to perform, right? Would you walk up to them and say, "Oh man, are you sure you nailed that run? Ooh, they're gonna know. They're gonna know that you skipped one practice session last week. Ooh." You would never say that to a friend. I would never say that to a friend. Anybody who would say that to a friend is definitely going to be irrelevant in about 10 minutes in the music scene, right? So, having some compassion for yourself, speaking to yourself as though you are speaking to a friend or someone that you love, care about, because you need to love you in order to step on stage and be confident. Okay. So again, we're reframing. No one wants you to fail, right? We're reframing those hypothetical thoughts and saying, okay, what's the reality of this situation, right? I am in the present. I am not in the future. I am not in the past, right? And the final thing that we're going to do is, and this is going to sound silly because the first time somebody told me to do this, I thought it was silly. We're going to visualize. The power of visualization cannot be overstated. Visualize often. We are going to visualize ourselves being successful. And I don't just mean visualize a good performance. I want you to visualize the aftermath of a good performance, right? I want you to visualize yourself celebrating a great performance. I want you to visualize on, let's say you're playing your senior recital and, your teacher is there, your family's all there, everybody's there. You visualize your beautiful, impressive, incredible performance, right? But then you take a second, you visualize the after party where everybody's going, "Wow, you were incredible." Right? You were amazing. You sounded beautiful. I've never heard an instrument played so well. And then you're going to visualize Monday morning when you are in your primary instrument professor's classroom and you're reviewing how your recital went and they go, "Wow, that was even more incredible than I could have imagined." Right? You worked so hard and I'm so proud of you, right? Same goes for juries. You're going to visualize getting the best jury result you've ever had, right? Because going into it with that mentality of I'm not going to fail, of already seeing the results, is going to make you that much more likely and that much more determined to make it there, to have that happen. So take a second right now, and I just want you to imagine yourself in whatever performance you have coming up, if any. If you don't have one, make one up, you know. And I want you to visualize not just the performance, right? Visualize a snippet of the performance, but also visualize the aftermath. What results do you want to see? Okay, so just take a second. Now, what feelings did that bring up? For me, I mean, it just brought up the warm and fuzzies, right? It brought up this moment of self-confidence, this moment of, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, that's exactly how that's going to go. So, regularly visualizing before performances, even during practices, before lessons, all that good stuff, regular visualization is huge. It is a game changer, right? So this is one of those weird moments where we're not exactly in the present moment, right? We are visualizing the future, but for a good reason, not because we think that we're going to fail. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor. Do we have any questions? Or any personal experiences we want to talk about, kind of work through?
Nothing's really coming to mind.
Okay. So what technique do you feel like is resonated the most with you?
I like the thought and emotion, the hypothetical reality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge one for me. And I definitely, it's a hard one to integrate, right? Because we tend to just kind of let our brains take over a little bit. But yeah, being able to be able to label, right? And say, no, that's a hypothetical, right? This is reality. That's a hypothetical. So how do you think that you can integrate that into your performance preparation regularly?
I feel like for me, just using it like a normal day to day, just
Yeah. Yeah, that's
stuff.
yeah, I mean, and that's real. I have a very good example here recently. I had a so I was dog sitting or house sitting for a friend, and they ended up canceling last minute. Okay, not really last minute, like they canceled a couple weeks in advance, and they're like, hey, plans changed. And my brain immediately went to, oh, they don't like me. They don't like me. I did something wrong, right? Um, and they're never going to talk to me again. Like that was what went through my brain. And it started to spiral, it started to take over, but then I went, whoa, 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 hang on. Is that a hypothetical? Is that my brain making things up? Or is the reality of this situation just they're no longer going out of town? They're not snubbing our friendship. They're just no longer going out of town and don't need somebody, you know? So our brains, again, tend to do these funny things just because they want to protect us, but it's just not always based in reality. And I highly recommend, so it's a little bit more geared towards PTSD and anxiety, but these things are so, so closely intertwined. If you've ever never read The Body Keeps Score, at least there's a chapter section where he talks about the prefrontal cortex as being the kind of the watchtower. It has all the information, right? Like it's on a mountain on a watchtower looking for fires, right? It's looking out, right? It can see everything. The um the amygdala, however, which tends to kind of respond to things, right? Does not have all of that information. So a signal can get sent to the amygdala, and the amygdala goes, "Wah!" you know, got to do something, got to get mad, got to get upset, whatever. Whereas the prefrontal cortex is like, whoa, hang on, you don't have all the information, and then stops it, right? So we kind of want to guide our brain into sending messages to the prefrontal cortex first, right? So that it can go, okay, wait, I have all the information here, right? And that's kind of just that's a badly phrased overview of that, but it is a fantastic book if you want to learn more about how the brain operates and how the brain perceives this kind of fight or flight that we tend to go into when it comes to performance anxiety, which it's a lot of what it is, right? It's this fight or flight, it's this panic because our brains are trying to protect us from danger. And our brains can't differentiate between, um, playing in front of somebody and being chased down by a tiger. Our brains cannot differentiate that when it comes to our fight or flight responses. So, again, just kind of teaching and rewiring the brain and labeling those moments of wait, that's not real, you know. Um, Over time, it takes less effort, right? Because we're able to form those neural pathways that, keep us from going into panic mode, right? So again, over time, it becomes easier to do that automatically and to be in the present moment and to understand what's going on. So I know that we're a couple minutes over. I'm sorry. Um, just to kind of in closing, mindfulness is just like music. It is a practice. It is a skill. It takes practice. So, I don't want you to walk away from this thinking that, immediately you are going to just have it down, understand that we all slip, we all have moments where we are less mindful and less in the present. And that's okay, right? It does take time. And I highly encourage you to, like you said, integrate this into your daily life, not just into your music practice, because there are lasting benefits, emotionally speaking, physically speaking, and of course, with your music. And I would also like to touch on, I do have some other classes coming up that are fantastic for this. I want to touch on how mindfulness can help musicality, all that good stuff, which will definitely, you know, which will, it's a great thing. um, and if you are interested in guided body scans, things like that, I would highly recommend apps like Insight Timer, Calm. There's also a program called Yoga for All Musicians. If you have not followed them on Instagram, you definitely should. There's also a book called Yoga for Musicians, which they talk a lot about meditation and guided practices, which are fantastic. I also have a workbook coming out here soon called Meditation for Flutists, which will be another great one. I just want to end this with kind of a positive affirmation. Um, just to remind you that, even though sometimes being a musician can be very hard and very taxing on the mind, musicians are some of the strongest, most capable people out there. So I just want to end this with the affirmation that I am strong and I am capable. And if you want to repeat that as many times as you would like, today, tomorrow, forever, I am strong, I am capable, I worked hard for this. And that's another great way to start your performance preparation. I am strong, I am capable, I have worked hard for this. All right. Did you have any questions? Anything I can answer before we go?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I will send out the replay to you and those that missed it. But I have another class coming up September 28th, which is dealing with burnout. If you're all interested in that, send me a message and I'll send you the sign up link. I'm trying to make that a little easier than the old sign up link, but
Okay.
I'll see you around.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.